What's up, guys? This is Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lantern, bringing you guys the playoff picture episode for Week 9. This is where we will talk about the playoff scenarios coming up in Week 10. So basically, now that Week 9 is finished, here's the playoff scenarios that can happen with the Week 9 records, is essentially what the series is. So we'll get right into things here and we'll talk about what goes into this and what the playoff rules are. So in terms of seeding, the division winners automatically make playoffs. So there are four divisions, all four of them make playoffs. And then the next best records from each conference will take the final two spots. So that means there's four playoff teams from each conference, eight total. Placing is determined based on number of wins, then differential, then conference wins, so wins against teams in your own conference, which means you can only hit a maximum of 5 of those, then head-to-head record. If there's a tie somehow, a tiebreaker match will occur. This is something that can happen because Dom and Daniel play in week 12, and I've been saying this is the only way a tie could happen is if somehow Dom and Daniel end up with the same record, with Daniel winning the Week 12 match because Dom won their Week 1 match. So Daniel has to win the Week 12 match, and then because of that, they have to have the same record, the same differential, and the same number of conference wins. One of those things is definitely possible. They both have the exact same number of conference wins. So Dom would somehow have to end up winning another conference. Oh, hang on, does Dom play in his conference to finish out the season? Because this may not be possible. Yes, he does. He plays Matt in week 11. So Dom would have to beat Matt in week 11. Daniel would have to. Daniel doesn't play another interconference match there. So it's all up in the air, honestly, but there is definitely still a scenario where the two of them tie. And so then if that happens, we'll have to have an extra week for them to have a tiebreaker match, and we'll see, if that matters. That obviously only matters if they're fighting for a playoff spot. If they aren't fighting for a playoff spot, I really don't care if they tie because they're not going to make playoffs. So it doesn't matter. I don't see a world really where both of them somehow don't make playoffs at this point, but there you go. Yeah, so in terms of playoffs as it stands, the clinch teams now are Ben and the Tampa Bay Weasels for playoffs, myself and the Ladner Lantern also for playoffs, and Cade and the Krabby Kadabbies for the Twin Leaf division and for playoffs. So congratulations to all three teams, especially Cade and the Krabby Kadabbies, who now have nothing to play for the rest of the season. And because of that, he is actually opting to forfeit all of his matches throughout the rest of the season just to sort of give people a better chance at making playoffs themselves and to not give away any strategies that he might have or that his opponents might have throughout the rest of the season. And taking a loss this week, Magic has officially eliminated himself from playoffs as well. He can now not catch up to the Atlanta Raptors, who are sitting in that wild card number 2 seed in the Sinnoh Conference. Um, the three teams above the Atlanta Raptors have all clinched already, and Magic can no longer clinch because he can't hit 5 wins. So there's no way that Magic can make playoffs, and unfortunately, Magic has now been eliminated. So moving on, the playoff designations. Z means the team has clinched a division, so obviously you'll see Z next to the Krabby Kadabbies this week. Y means the team has clinched a playoff berth, either a wildcard spot or is in line to potentially win the division. You'll see this next to the Ladner Lantern and the Tampa Bay Weasels. And X means the team has been mathematically eliminated from playoffs. This is next to the Snow Point City Blizzard. So here are the divisions. Phil in the Wiltshire Wartortles 5-4 plus 6 with 2 conference wins, still leading his division despite taking 2 temporary FF losses. So in theory, he could actually be 7-2 right now, which I think would actually clinch in playoffs. Yeah, if he was 7-2, he would be clinched for playoffs. So if he does end up redoing those matches, then he'll be clinched for playoffs. Daniel and the Seattle Raptors have the asterisk next to them because they have taken one of those temporary FF wins over Phil. So realistically, he is 4-4 right now, but the standings show that he is 5-4. And Jay and the UNC Wingles picking up another win and moving up to 2-7 minus 18, still not eliminated. And I actually think, based on my math, he can't be eliminated yet. So we'll see that when we get to his team. In the Old Ill division, Matt and the Green Bay Pods, they would be first either way, but they are the other team that took a temporary FF win from Phil, and so he's 6-3 plus 13 right now. But he's really 5-3 at the moment, and we can't say for sure if he would be 6-3 or 5-4. Dom and the Cleveland Cavaliers picking up their win over Jed this week, moving to 4-5 -3. Big win for him because it puts him in the wildcard 2 seed right now, and that is pretty big. Jed and the Adelaide Overheat still not out of it yet, but it's looking a little bit bad for him at the moment. He basically needs to win all of the matches that he can to finish out the season. Over there in the Twin Leaf division, Cade and the Krabby Kadabbies have clinched their division because Nacho and the Detroit Terravolts cannot hit 6 wins. So there is no way that Cade can drop from first place in the Twin Leaf division. Therefore, he has clinched that playoff spot and will be playing one of the wildcard teams from the Hoenn Conference in the first round of the playoffs. Also means that again he has nothing to play for the rest of the season. So you'll see that his record is going to end at 6-6. 100% his final regular season record will be 6-6. Nacho and the Detroit Terravolts are not out of it yet, but we will talk about that when we get to his team. 2-7 -13, taking a big loss to Jay this week. Ended up clinching myself and Cade because of his loss. He cannot get up to 7 wins, and he couldn't get up to 6 wins, which I was at before my loss to Cade, my FF win over Cade, and so I was clinched as well because the Detroit Terravolts are the 5th seed, and so as long as I can't fall farther down than 4th, then it doesn't matter. Magic in the Stone Point City Blizzard being finally eliminated, having not a fantastic season. Like I said at the beginning of the season, I wasn't a huge fan of his team, and I don't know necessarily if he's been using all the pieces that I would have liked to see him use. Landorus Therian being the big standout Mon on his team, his first overall pick, and it has come to like 3 games the entire season, and it has maybe 1 kill. Nope, it has 0 kills and it's come to 3 games. It did come to his only win, and so it's only died twice. But again, it hasn't been the star of his team this season. Realistically, Quillfish has been the star of his team, and unfortunately, that doesn't bode well. In the San Gem division, you've got the Tampa Bay Weasels going 8-1. I mean, Ben is absolutely steamrolling the league right now, and then me right behind him. Both of us are clinched. We both have the same differential, same conference wins. I, however, cannot hit 5 conference wins because of my loss to Ben, and Ben can hit 5 conference wins. There's no scenario where Ben and I tie because we don't play each other in week 12. So as long as Ben keeps winning, then he will secure the division, which means I'm going to be realistically looking at one of the wildcard spots for my playoff race. But I am clinched for playoffs, which is good. And then Austin and the Atlanta Raptors, who are coming up second in the teams that we're going to talk about, and we'll talk about his playoff chances there. So here is what the current standings of the conferences look like. There's a big asterisk on top of the Hoenn Conference right now. The first 3 spots up there could be swapped around a little bit based on how Phil plays his makeup matches. Phil has committed to, I believe, playing Matt in the Green Bay Glass Pods for his Week 8 match and Daniel in the Seattle Raptors for his Week 9 match ahead of time, and he is also going to play his Week 10 match. So I believe Phil will be able to play all of his games. It's just a matter of when that's going to happen. Again, I said this in the weekly recap. I'll say it again. Our thoughts go to him and his mom. Really unfortunate scenario in that his mom got sick and he has to take care of her. And I totally understand what's going on right now. So we're just sort of leaving Phil where he is, and we're leaving the league in a spot where he can come back cleanly and continue basically from where he left off. So we'll talk about the teams now. So we got Jed and the Adelaide Overheat. He's actually not in an elimination scenario or a clinching scenario yet. He cannot be eliminated this week, whether or not he loses. He still can't be eliminated yet. That may be coming up quickly, though, if he does continue to lose. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Obviously, he can't clinch because he's sitting in the 5th spot right now, and so he would have to win a game to even make it into the 4th spot. So we'll keep an eye on how Jed's going to play out the rest of the season. Austin and the Atlanta Raptors can clinch playoffs with 2 different scenarios this week. With only 3 weeks left, if the Detroit Terravolts lose, they cannot reach 5 wins anymore, which means the Atlanta Raptors would clinch because he's at 5 wins. That would also eliminate the Detroit Terravolts. And so these scenarios directly affect the Detroit Terravolts because they're the only 2 teams left in the Sinnoh Conference that have a chance of flipping around the playoff order. So this is going to sound all too redundant when we get to Nacho's slide. But yeah, Austin can clinch if the Detroit Terravolts lose or if he wins. Austin plays. Who does he play? Austin plays Jed in week 10. So if Austin wins, beats Jed, Or if Ben and the Tampa Bay Weasels beat Nacho, both of those reasonably likely scenarios based on how Austin's been playing this season and based on how Ben has been smashing the league, then Austin will clinch playoffs and we will know the 4 playoff teams for the Sinnoh Conference, although the division is still up in the air. The San Gem division is still up in the air. So we'll get a closer look. I would predict by week 11 we will know the exact standings of the Sinnoh Conference playoffs, and there will be nothing left to play for in week 12 necessarily, but we'll sort of see what goes on there. Next up is Dom, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Dom cannot clinch with a win, and he cannot be eliminated with a loss. So this is kind of, out there, but more of a week 10 playoff picture sort of thing, talking about Dom and whether or not he wins this week. He does play me, and so we'll sort of see how that goes. Historically, it's been a very close rivalry between us, so we'll see what the outcome of that match is going to be. Nacho, like I said, this can be really redundant. Nacho cannot clinch. He's basically playing for his life, and his destiny is no longer in his control after losing to Jay, unfortunately. Because if Austin and the Atlantis Raptors end up winning and the Detroit Terribolts win, he still can't hit 6 wins, which is why the Krabby Kadabbies have clinched now. So Nacho will unfortunately be eliminated if that's the case. So we'll sort of see what happens this week. I'm excited to see what happens. There's talks of Nacho and Ben playing on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, and that would be, well, actually, that'll be when this video goes up. So I guess I could know this by the day that this playoff picture goes up, and you guys will hear about it next week. But potentially, Nacho could be eliminated, and we'll know the playoff teams by day 2 of week 10, essentially. Matt and the Green Bay Goliaths Pod's big asterisk next to this one, just because I have no idea what the scenarios look like if he loses his makeup game to Phil. This is assuming he wins his makeup game. So let's just say we're assuming that he wins his makeup match with Phil. If that's the case, then he would remain at 6-3. Okay. So if that's the case, then this week, if he wins his match, he clinches playoffs, and he can clinch if the Adelaide Overheat lose. This is assuming that the Phil makeup game happens and he wins against Phil. Okay, he can clinch his division if he wins and the Cleveland Cavaliers lose, because then he would be hitting 7 wins and the Cleveland Cavaliers would be at 4. They would not be able to hit 7 wins anymore, and so Matt would clinch his division. Again, assuming he wins the makeup match with Phil. Excuse me, these are the scenarios where he can make playoffs. He cannot be eliminated this week. So Matt will be looking to win his makeup match with Phil and his match this week. It's pretty clutch that he win his match this week regardless. But winning his makeup match with Phil seems to be a little bit more important, because if he wins his makeup match with Phil, then he can rely on the Adelaide Overheat losing to clinch his playoffs as well. He does play Cade and the Krabby Kadabbies. So I don't even know why I put that he wins. He actually just has to win his match against his makeup match against Phil, because Cade has FF to him in week 10. So Matt will just be looking to win his temporary FF match against Phil, because he's already guaranteed himself a 3-0 win in week 10. So I don't know why I wrote GBG win. He can make playoffs, or basically if he wins his makeup match with Phil, then he guarantees himself playoffs. And if the Cleveland Cavaliers lose and he wins his makeup match with Phil, then he guarantees the division. So it's a lot less complicated than I made it out to sound, because I'm an idiot and I didn't check who he played in week 10. Yeah, Krabby Kadabbies have already clinched their division, so they are locked into their playoff spot. I won't reveal which wildcard seed he is playing, but he is playing one of the 2 wildcard seeds. That's how the playoffs have worked. So, if you had followed last season at all in any form, then you would already know that anyways. And so it doesn't really, I don't feel bad about saying that, because it's not relevant, Yeah, anyways, moving on. Myself, I have clinched playoffs, and I cannot clinch the division yet because I'm 1 game behind the division leader. So there's really nothing to talk about here. Daniel and the Seattle Raptors. So again, this is the asterisks on the top of the pie here. He does have to win his makeup match with Phil for this playoff scenario to go through, but If he does win his makeup match with Phil, then he has to rely on Jed losing and him winning. Now, he does play Magic in the Stone Point City Blizzard, last team in the league. Magic has nothing to play for, so he's going to be playing to upset people from making playoffs. So this could actually be a really hard match against Magic. Um, I'm rooting for Daniel because I think that playoffs are cool. Obviously, the underdog is always a fun person to root for, anyways. So Magic might get a lot of supporters this week, but I think it'd be really cool if Daniel made playoffs with a much better record, a much stronger record than he did last season. Last season, he ended up making playoffs with a 2-10 record because his conference was extremely weak, and that's sort of how it played out. So that's Daniel. Magic has been eliminated from playoff contention and will be fighting to upset some teams. He plays Daniel, who's in the playoff race in week 10. He plays Jay and the UNC Wingles in week 11, who aren't really in the playoff race. So that's probably not a match to look out for necessarily at all. Probably be the match of two eliminated teams at that point. And then in week 12, he plays somebody. He plays Austin and the Atlanta Raptors, which also could be a non existent game. That match actually could not matter either, based on Austin being able to clinch playoffs this week. So, um, yeah, pretty much all I have to say there about Magic. And we'll move on. Ben has clinched playoffs. He cannot clinch the division quite yet. That's a week 11 scenario potentially, or maybe a week 12 scenario. So we'll just move on. Jay and the UNC Wingles can be eliminated this week. Now, this does rely on Phil's makeup matches going exactly the way that they have gone with the temporary FF wins. So that does mean that Phil would have to lose both of the matches. And so if that happens, Jay can be eliminated if the Cleveland Cavaliers win as soon as 4 teams hit wins. I didn't even write that properly. It's hit 5 wins. So that's assuming the Cleveland Cavaliers win this week and the UNC Wingles lose. Then the UNC Wingles would not be able to hit 5 wins, and there would be 4 teams at 5 wins, which would mean that the UNC Wingles are eliminated. So this is all up in the air based on how Phil does his makeup matches. And then last but not least is Phil himself. He actually, his record is indicated by this. So depending on his makeup matches, he could have already clinched. If the makeup matches go as is, then he actually still can clinch this week if he wins and the Adelaide Overheat lose. He is playing Jay and the UNC Wingles this week, and Jed is playing Austin the Atlanta Raptors. So that's going to be it for me, and I'll catch you guys for playoff picture next week. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more insight on how Phil has done with his makeup matches at the very least, and if it matters or not for heading into week 11, which will be the next episode.